All right, part two of news writing is going to be showing you this really important model that we talk about in news writing called the inverted pyramid. Um, Also, we'll be talking about those five W's and the H: who, what, where, when, why, and how, which is what news writing is really all about. Okay? Um, when you write an essay, I mentioned this to you guys in class the other day, that when you write an essay, you are usually try to start with something very specific or maybe even small, and then you expand as you analyze. In news writing, we kind of do the opposite. That first sentence, which we call our lead in a news story, is got to be like your thesis in practice, is the most important sentence of the entire news story. And what we want it to do is contain as many of those five W's and an H as possible. So oftentimes, and I'm going to show you some examples of that here in a minute, that we can try and get, if not all of them, most of them, in a single sentence. And we can also vary which of those five W's and the H we want to focus on in our lead. Then, as we go throughout our story, we go from the most important, like facts at the beginning. Then we give details, and then at the end of our stories is the sort of the more background and the least important details. Okay, that's not to mean that they aren't important. They're just not as important as our beginning. So to look at this, and as we're talking about news leads, again, if we can address all five in the first sentence, we should. So here's two examples. The Newark Valley boys baseball squad played a game yesterday afternoon. Now, that's fact. That's news. But if we try to put as many of those five W's and an H in this lead as possible, we come up with the second version, which is the Newark Valley's boys baseball squad beat Candor at home yesterday in a thrilling extra inning showdown between neighboring rivals. Not only do you see that has a whole lot more information in it, but that's a lot more interesting to read. I don't want you to ever get the impression that news stories are supposed to be just factual, like reports. You can see that this particular journalist who wrote this lead is definitely a fan of at least one of the Newark Valley boys baseball squad as they defeated this thrilling showdown. So you can see that there's definitely bias in that, but it's still reporting. It's still delivering news. Okay? Now, here's like basically the same lead, but depending on what we want to emphasize. Do we want to emphasize the who, the what, where, when, why, or how? And we can see that there's several different ways to write that lead. I'm not going to read through all of these, but if you look at the first two, we have the Newark Valley Board of Education members passed a resolution last night banning the wearing of hats in school district buildings. So we wanted to emphasize who, so we began with the Newark Valley Board of Education. The next lead wants to emphasize what was it they were discussing. Hat wearing was banned in all school district buildings last night after the Newark Valley Board of Education passed a new resolution. So you can see that depending on what you want to emphasize in that lead, it can change the lead itself, but really as much information as we can is getting into that same first sentence. You can see then from going forward from this point, what do we do next? Well, we give information about each of these things. Who, Newark Valley, we give that lead, and then we talk about what the school board was doing and why and how and where. Okay, and that's where our detail comes in. So whatever we start with, we fill in, and hopefully we do it with quotes from our sources about these other W's and the H.